Hollywood lied to you. Those low-slung six-shooters weren't how cowboys really carried their guns. The truth is far more surprising. In the dusty towns and wide-open plains of the American Old West, practicality always outweighed style, and the way a gun was carried could mean the difference between life and death. From massive revolvers too heavy for belts to discreet Derringers tucked away in smoky saloons, this video uncovers the ingenious, authentic methods cowboys used to carry their weapons, separating Hollywood's myth from frontier reality. The beginning of the holster. When the West was still rugged, cowboys quickly learned to live, work, and ride with a gun always close at hand. But the sleek, low-slung, fast-draw holsters often seen in movies were not part of the actual frontier wardrobe. The reality was far less glamorous. Real cowboys were more likely to wear derby hats than towering Stetsons and favored denim or woolen trousers over fancy leather chaps. Function mattered much more than fashion, and every cowboy had to find a way to carry a firearm suitable for their daily work. Initially, many pioneers didn't even use a holster at all, simply tucking a small pistol into a coat pocket or slipping it inside the waistband of their overalls, a method that was awkward to carry and less secure. But the harsh conditions of the fronty, dirt, rain, and non-stop riding were hard on exposed firearms, making those common carrying methods unsuitable for the cowboy's active, practical lifestyle. A historic turning point occurred. The very first functional holsters were not born in the Old West. They actually emerged as military equipment decades earlier. In the 1830s, soldiers carried heavy flintlock pistols and simple leather bags designed to hold the weight securely during long marches on horseback. These early holsters were often attached to the saddle rigging, keeping the weapon stable while riding. This military design gradually evolved into the first leather holsters used on the American frontier. The necessity of the holster became obvious when large revolving pistols like the gigantic Colt Walker appeared in the 1840s, weighing over 4.5 pounds even before being loaded. Tying a pistol of this size to a belt was clearly impractical, and they were so large that holsters had to be specifically built for the saddle, which is how early U.S. cavalry troops carried them. This quiet evolution marked the beginning of the cowboy holster, an item shaped far more by utility and durability than by the dramatic flourish we often see on screen. How long guns were carried? Cowboys and pioneers were never limited only to revolvers. They often relied on repeating rifles, such as the legendary Winchester Model 1873, often called the gun that won the West, alongside their reliable shotguns. These lever-action carbines were short, light, and perfectly balanced for use on horseback. To keep their rifles close at hand, riders typically stowed them in saddle scabbards, leather cases attached to the saddle, which protected the guns from the dust, rain, and rough terrain of the frontier, while still allowing for quick retrieval whenever needed. A crucial tactic often overlooked on screen is that many pioneers preferred combining a lever-action rifle with 1 or 2 Colt single-action Army revolvers. A practical reason lay behind this setup. Both types of firearms often use the same caliber ammunition, a sensible decision that reduced the need to carry multiple types of cartridges, a huge advantage when ammunition was precious and hard to find at distant trading posts. And while carrying 2 revolvers sounds impressive, they were not meant to be fired simultaneously, as dual wielding resulted in very poor accuracy and had very limited practical utility. Instead, they served as essential backup weapons. When one ran dry, a cowboy could switch to the second one using their dominant hand instead of stopping to reload. This was a critical advantage because reloading a revolver was a slow and painstaking process, taking considerable time compared to modern firearms. Even experienced buffalo hunters utilized this system, becoming adept at seamlessly transitioning from rifle to revolver while on horseback. To keep the rifle steady, some even used clever straps or leather loops to secure the rifle to their body, allowing them to drop the rifle across the saddle while freeing their hands for quick access to their pistols. William E. Webb, a pioneer in this method, described the technique in his 1870 book, Buffalo Land, explaining how a rifle could hang on a shoulder strap and lie securely across the saddle, while the rider drew and used his revolvers one after the other. Webb noted that with practice, a skilled rider could fire multiple rounds, reload on the move, and never miss a beat with the horse, proving this system was less about drama and more about always being ready, where survival fostered ingenious adaptations for daily life. Holster, speed or safety? Cowboys quickly recognized that speed efficiency was crucial on the open range, and standardizing their gear made sense because ammunition was precious. Although the military had pioneered the holster concept decades earlier, it was the cowboys who integrated it into daily life, understanding that having a rapidly drawn gun within reach was far more useful than having it strapped to the saddle, especially when working on foot around the cattle camp. This shift gave rise to a new type of craftsmanship, with saddle makers across the Old West starting to design specialized leather holsters that could hang securely from the belt, allowing ranchers, wranglers, and trail riders to carry their pistols comfortably on the hip and draw them for use with lightning speed. The hip holster was the cornerstone of their daily carry on the frontier, showing a practical evolution born not from flourish but from genuine necessity. Speed was essential. By the 1870s, a new style of holster was gaining popularity across the frontier. The Mexican loop holster, also known as the El Paso loop, became a favorite carry item for cowboys due to its simplicity, durability, and secure fit. This design marked a major step forward in how revolvers were carried on the range, and it was constructed from a single, thick piece of leather, sometimes repurposing used hide. The construction involved folding and stitching the leather to form a shaped pouch, creating a secure leather loop that held the holster tightly in place. This clever structure allowed the holster to ride high and stable on the wearer's belt, rather than swinging loosely below the hip. Unlike the flashy rigs often seen in films, cowboy holsters and belts rarely matched. They were practical tools, not fashion accessories. Furthermore, the iconic cartridge belts we often picture were not as practical as they looked, as the exposed loops made the ammunition vulnerable to rain, dust, and corrosion. Many experienced pioneers preferred to store their spare ammunition in small leather pouches on their belt, where the rounds were kept cleaner and protected from the elements. This safe balance of function over show reveals a deeper truth. The cowboy's on-body gear truly evolved out of necessity, not spectacle, and the Mexican loop holster was built to endure the hardships of life on the trail. Holster design upgrades. Although early designs like the Mexican loop holster were very secure, they often covered almost the entire grip of the gun, making grasping and drawing the pistol difficult and slow, especially from horseback or during daily ranch work that required quick handling. Consequently, over time, practical cowboys and trail riders began to customize these holsters to suit their needs. Many cut down the top edge, exposing the grip and part of the trigger guard, a small adjustment that made it much easier to firmly grasp the revolver and draw it smoothly, especially while wearing gloves or heavy trail gear. Although these modified holsters improved accessibility and created a significantly faster draw, they still bore little resemblance to the sleek, low-slung, fast-draw rigs of Hollywood legend. In the mid-1800s, some unique carrying methods of figures like Wild Bill Hickok reportedly involved wearing their six-shooters with the grips facing forward. This position allowed for a cross-draw from the opposite hip or a draw from under the arm, a technique that could be more comfortable when sitting on horseback or navigating tight spaces. Additionally, the cavalry draw technique, with the gun inverted, became common during the Civil War era because pistols were still considered secondary weapons compared to swords. Initially, cavalrymen were expected to draw their revolvers with their non-dominant hand in a cross-draw style from the opposite hip, where the grip facing forward would be easier to access. Although drawing with the non-dominant hand was later abandoned in favor of drawing with the dominant hand, the cavalry draw style still offered the notable advantage of a faster draw when seated. California Slim Jim. When military saddle-mounted holsters had served their historical role, a truly revolutionary innovation emerged, and it completely changed how cowboys carried their weapons. In the 1850s, a new holster style was capturing attention on the frontier, the sleek California Slim Jim. It was among the earliest purpose-built holsters of the Old West and marked a massive improvement over clumsy pommel holsters, which were essentially loose leather tubes dangling from the saddle and offered little in the way of safety or convenience. In contrast, the Slim Jim was designed using a thin, sculpted leather style that closely molded the shape of a revolver, a complete departure from the rough designs that preceded it. The greatest innovation of the Slim Jim was how it was worn. It featured a stitched-on belt loop at the rear, allowing it to be worn on the belt instead of being tied to the saddle. This freed the weapon from the saddle and put it within easy reach of the wearer when they were working on foot around cattle or simply when seated. This arrangement proved to be a much more comfortable solution when riding, working, and simply sitting down. Another crucial innovation was its open-top design. Unlike the enclosed pommel holsters, which made drawing the pistol slow and difficult, the Slim Jim allowed for a quick and easy draw while still securely holding the revolver in place. This made it especially useful for pioneers and riders who needed their gear close at hand, balancing safety and convenience. This was a giant leap forward in practicality, especially when compared to other failed creations of the era, such as the nolongerhere rotor revolver, which was awkward to carry due to its bulging cylinder. Despite its practical construction, the Slim Jim also reflected the artistry of frontier leathercraft. Many were beautifully adorned with complex geometric tooling and stamped patterns, turning what was essentially working equipment into a personal style statement, while adhering to the rule that utility always preceded style. The Slim Jim represented a turning point, combining function, comfort, and design in a way previous holsters never had, laying a solid foundation for the more advanced Western holsters that would emerge in the coming decades. While traditional hip holsters like the Mexican loop proved practical for daily work, the Old West still required carrying solutions that were considered more unconventional, yet highly effective in situations demanding discretion and comfort while seated. This was the Crossdraw shoulder rig, an early form of what we now think of as the shoulder holster. Although many associate shoulder holsters with sleek 1980s-style pistols, the idea actually dates back to the 1870s on the American frontier. This setup positioned the revolver under the arm, angled for a crossdraw across the chest. The rationale behind the popularity of the Crossdraw shoulder rig was entirely based on practicality. While traditional hip holsters were convenient when standing, they became awkward when the wearer was seated for long periods. Some riders found this arrangement much more comfortable when riding horseback or when sitting for hours in stagecoaches and trains. Furthermore, gamblers, who often spent all day at card tables, also favored this style because a traditional hip holster would be difficult to access or impossible to draw in a seated position. The cross-draw style offered the advantage of a faster draw when seated, a critical benefit when the reload time for a single-action revolver was a slow and painstaking process. A standout tactical advantage of the cross-draw shoulder rig was its ability to be concealed. Unlike exposed belt-mounted holsters, these shoulder rigs could be hidden beneath a coat or duster. This made them especially appealing to Western lawmen, discreet scouts, and professional gamblers who preferred to keep their gear out of sight yet easily accessible. This concealment was highly practical, standing in stark contrast to the Hollywood myth of hidden spring-loaded gun concealment devices often shown with pistols, but which hardly ever worked. The cross-draw shoulder rig provided a more realistic and effective concealment solution. The pinnacle of this popularity is exemplified by one of the Old West's most famous figures, Doc Holliday. He is reported to have carried a pair of Colt Navy revolvers in a cross-draw shoulder rig, allowing him to draw smoothly while seated. This early cross-draw shoulder rig design shows just how innovative carrying methods on the frontier could be, but they always served a practical need: comfort, easy access when seated, and maximum concealment, proving once again that utility always preceded style. While hip holsters demonstrated practicality for daily work, The Old West still needed weapons that met the growing demand for concealment and close-range self-defense in towns and saloons, where small size and discretion were paramount. This need fueled the popularity of extremely small firearms, starting with the Allen and Thurber pepperbox. This peculiar weapon looked like a pocket machine gun. Quirky appearance aside, these guns were quite popular on the frontier for surprisingly practical reasons. First, they were simple and reliable. Second, they packed enough firepower at close range, which was exactly what people needed for self-defense. Third, they were affordable, costing 4 times less than a Colt. Although the main drawback was that they were muzzle loaders, making reloading very cumbersome and time-consuming, they featured a double-action trigger, which was an advanced feature at the time. However, the pinnacle of concealment belongs to the Remington Model 95, double Derringer. This was a truly remarkable pistol. It was tiny, measuring less than 5 inches long and weighing only 11 ounces. This diminutive size was clearly designed for covert carry and was highly popular among gamblers, women, merchants, and travelers. Basically, anyone who wanted to protect themselves from an unexpected attack. This item could easily fit inside a woman's purse or be tucked away in clothing. Despite its small size, it was loaded with .41 caliber cartridges and spat out lead at 685 feet per second, which was more powerful than the 650 feet per second muzzle velocity of the 1873 Army Colt. Curiously, this pistol lacked a trigger guard, and it could only fire twice before reloading. Thanks to these benefits, the Remington Model 95 sold over 150,000 of these handy, affordable auxiliary firearms. The success of the Derringer further clarifies the distinction between practical concealment and the Hollywood myth of hidden spring-loaded gun concealment devices, which hardly ever worked. The buscadero holster myth, when Hollywood manufactured speed. We have spent time exploring the practical holsters built on the principles of utility, durability, and comfort. But now, it is time to confront cinema's most iconic, yet historically inaccurate creation, the buscadero holster. This holster style was born and thrived during the golden age of Old West cinema, stretching from the 1940s to the 1960s, a time when stars like John Wayne became larger-than-life figures, shaping the public image of the gunslinger. In this era, the buscadero holster, the low-slung, low-riding style on the leg, became the visual symbol of the fast-draw cowboy, entirely distinct from the practical hip holsters of the 1800s frontier like the Mexican loop or the California Slim Jim. In terms of design, the buscadero rig was constructed to sit lower on the leg, the purpose being to reduce the movement required to reach the grip. Many versions even featured leather straps around the thigh to prevent the holster from shifting upwards during a fast draw. This was design optimized for absolute speed, and on screen, John Wayne could often be seen wearing this type, for example, with his Colt single-action Army revolver while playing Deputy U.S. Marshal Rooster Cogburn. However, it is crucial to emphasize the buscadero design was made for spectacle and stunts, and absolutely not for the reality of 19th century cowboy life, because utility always preceded style in the Old West. The romanticized image of the cowboy quick-draw lifestyle, the idea of living by speed and audacity, is actually a 20th century invention born from Hollywood storytelling. This romanticization of the cowboy image began in the late 1800s with shows like Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, which used glittery props and theatrical costumes to transform harsh reality into entertainment. Hollywood adopted and cemented this image, creating a myth of speed that has almost no basis in authentic frontier history. Furthermore, Hollywood's frequent portrayal of fast-draw gunslingers using dual pistols is also a major exaggeration, as using 2 guns simultaneously resulted in very poor accuracy and had very limited practical utility. In summary, while fast-draw holsters shone on the silver screen and created unforgettable dramatic moments, they were virtually unknown on the real frontier. Authentic frontier gear developed around utility, durability, and comfort, not spectacle or speed. The image of the buscadero holster was not a daily working tool, but a cinematic prop engineered to serve the drama. Solutions to the capacity and speed problem. The perennial problem of 19th century revolvers was low ammunition capacity, and reloading was a slow and painstaking process. In an effort to create a high-capacity handgun, gunsmiths attempted various approaches, some of which were extremely peculiar. The French inventor, Casimir Le Faucheux, created a model that included 2 barrels and a massive cylinder holding 20 pinfire cartridges. This 20-shot, double-barreled revolver quickly gained popularity in South America due to its obvious advantage, 20 shots compared to 5 or 6 of its competitors. With a double-action firing mechanism, the shooter also gained a speed advantage, firing alternately from the 2 barrels without having to cock the hammer. However, the large cylinder made the gun very heavy and awkward to handle. The inventor tried to mitigate this by eliminating the trigger guard and allowing the trigger to fold down, although this made firing less convenient. Another unique solution was the Lamotte revolver combination. Jean-Alexandre François Lamotte, a doctor, invented this powerful, innovative, and effective item. Its main feature was an auxiliary smoothbore 20-gauge barrel that fired buckshot, delivering devastating results at close range. The primary barrel could hold up to 9.42 caliber rounds. The shooter could switch between the barrels simply by shifting a lever on the hammer. Although the Lamotte offered versatility, it was unreliable and expensive, with a fragile rammer lever and an indexing mechanism prone to wear. Nevertheless, these devices clearly show that Old West gunsmiths ceaselessly sought superior convenience and firepower, although many creations were ultimately defeated by their own complexity and technical issues. The Eagles' 1973 Desperado album cover reimagined the Wild West, with managers and roadies as bandits, binding the band, Jackson Browne, and J.D. Souther in a dramatic outlaw tableau. William Buffalo Bill Cody turned the cowboy into legend, but even his death sparked mystery. Just like his show, Hollywood glamorized guns, yet the real ways cowboys carried them were far more shocking. Belle Starr, the bandit queen, lived among outlaws and died violently in 1889. Shot off her horse in a brutal ambush, her unsolved murder remains one of the Old West's darkest mysteries. In 1897, the Hatfields posed armed in West Virginia, their fierce stares revealing a family forged in rivalry, violence, and survival. A brutal legacy that defined the Wild West's darkest feuds. Dallas Stoudemire, El Paso's fearless lawman, ruled with blazing guns and fiery temper, but betrayal ended him, shot in the back during a Manning gunfight, leaving behind a bloody Wild West legend. Dominic John O'Malley, the cowboy poet, posed in 1896. His verses, born from Montana's rugged ranch life, immortalized the grit, hardship, and fading romance of the Wild West. In an 1880 Wyoming saloon, laughter turned deadly as armed patrons forced a man to dance at gunpoint, a chilling snapshot of the Wild West's ruthless, lawless spirit. In 1886, young cowboy Charles Meeks posed on horseback with rifle in hand, a striking image of courage, survival, and the fearless spirit demanded by life in the Wild West. In 1902, on the Texas plains, cowboys sat before a chuck wagon eating breakfast on the ground, a raw glimpse into the rugged, simple rhythm of frontier ranch life. In 1880 Oregon, a hunter proudly posed with his kill, turning survival into spectacle, a stark reminder of the pride and necessity that defined frontier hunting traditions. Captured in 1888 near Sturgis, Dakota Territory, the cowboy shows a rider on horseback, an enduring symbol of grit, labor, and the untamed spirit that defined the Wild West. In 1872, Dodge City, Kansas, thrived as a frontier hub for hunters and drifters. This image of a Western arms store captures the firepower fueling the Wild West's booming chaos. In 1875, James Jim Hawkins posed with his firearms, embodying the fierce spirit of a Texas Ranger. His gaze and weapons marked him as a relentless guardian of the frontier. In 1890 at King Ranch, 5 Texas Rangers posed with rifles raised, a powerful image of vigilance and grit, embodying the fearless lawmen who became enduring symbols of Wild West justice. Between 1887 and 1892, cowboys roped a buffalo in a brutal hunt, a fierce chase that symbolized both frontier daring and the tragic decline of herds on the western plains. In 1889, Art Pullum posed in Nebraska with his hunting gear, embodying the gritty life of frontier hunters, a raw glimpse into survival and the relentless spirit of the Old West. 2 hunters posed triumphantly over a slain buffalo, a haunting image of the Wild West era when relentless hunts fed frontier life but drove these mighty animals toward devastating decline. Around 1880, a Native American police squad posed armed and uniformed, a striking image of resilience, tasked with enforcing order and justice within their own frontier communities of the Wild West. In 1913, Kosciuszko, Mississippi, young textile workers endured grueling hours and brutal conditions, a stark glimpse into the relentless pace and harsh realities of America's early 20th century industrial life. In Arizona's Four Peaks, hunters braved rugged wilderness filled with deer, rabbits, bears, and cougars, demanding raw courage and skill as every hunt in the Wild West carried deadly risks. The Winchester 1873, hailed as the gun that won the West, armed cowboys, rangers, and outlaws alike. Its durability, shared ammo with revolvers, and saddle-ready design made it the frontier's most practical and legendary rifle. The Colt 1873 single-action army, the legendary Peacemaker, defined the Wild West. Adopted by cowboys, rangers, and outlaws alike, its balance, power, and nicknames like Equalizer cemented it as the ultimate six-shooter of frontier survival and legend. The Colt 1851 Navy, famed as Wild Bill Hickok's revolver, earned renown for balance and reliability. From rangers to outlaws, its .36 caliber firepower became a frontier favorite, a true percussion peacemaker of the Wild West. In 1912, Pancho Villa posed on horseback, bandoliers across his chest, a fiery image of rebellion. His defiance, charisma, and ruthless ambition made him an enduring symbol of the chaos and passion of the Mexican Revolution. In 1878, Lincoln County warfighters posed with rifles, embodying New Mexico's violent frontier chaos. Amid the lawlessness, legends like Billy the Kid rose to infamy, turning a bloody feud into Wild West history. On January 2, 1883, George W. Parsons posed in Tombstone after Mexico travels. Once an attorney turned banker, his detailed diaries preserved Tombstone's gritty frontier life, capturing history beyond the gunfights and legends. In 1895, Yuma, Arizona, a sheriff's posse posed armed for action. These citizen enforcers embodied frontier justice, ordinary men sworn in briefly to defend fragile law in the lawless Wild West. On November 1, 1892, deputy marshals posed with weapons after killing Ned Christie. Their proud display captured the brutal reality of frontier justice, where law and violence were inseparable in the Old West. In Oregon's Coast Range, 2 hunters stood over a slain elk at the OK Hickok camp. Amid towering trees and a rough campfire setting, the photo captures frontier grit, pride, and survival in the wilderness. In 1910, Bonham, Texas, a lone wrangler rested beside his horse as massive herds grazed the plains. More than simple labor, the scene revealed horse breeding as the frontier's economic lifeblood and enduring Western tradition. In 1890, South Dakota, a young soldier posed with his horse at the Cheyenne camp. His uniform and gear reflected the U.S. Army's role in enforcing order and fragile security across the turbulent frontier. Born a slave in 1854, Nat Love won freedom after the Civil War and rode west. By 1876, his rodeo triumph in Deadwood earned him the nickname Deadwood Dick, cementing his cowboy legend. In 1900, Langtry, Texas, Judge Roy Bean, the infamous law west of the Pecos, held court with rough humor and iron will, dispensing frontier justice in ways as legendary as they were unpredictable. Billy Brooks, once both gunman and lawman in Kansas, met the hangman's rope in 1874 for horse theft. His downfall revealed the razor-thin line between justice and crime in the turbulent Old West. In 1888, Troop C of the 5th Cavalry confronted boomers invading Indian territory. These settlers rushed to claim land before Oklahoma's official opening, sparking clashes that revealed the lawless hunger driving frontier expansion. In 1893, Perry, Oklahoma, U.S. Deputy Marshals posed with local police, tasked with enforcing order amid settlement chaos. Their presence symbolized the fragile grip of law on a frontier bursting with ambition and conflict. In 1896, Dominic John Alley, the cowboy poet, posed in full ranch attire. His verses, born from Montana's rugged plains, captured the hardships, grit, and timeless adventures of life as a cowboy in the Old West. This journey has proven that the Old West was defined by utility, not flashy spectacle. Forget the buscadero myth. Real cowboys prioritize durability, comfort, and survival. From the high, stable Mexican loop to the discreet Derringer, every piece of gear was an ingenious adaptation built for the trail, the ranch, or the saloon table. We've successfully separated Hollywood legend from frontier reality. What surprised you most about the true ways guns were carried? Let us know in the comments below. If you appreciate uncovering the gritty truth of history, hit the like button and subscribe to No Longer Here for more myth-busting deep dives into the American Old West.